Today, Hannah Luke joins me, who is a current Women's Championship player for Blackburn, having already played in America, now moving back to England into her home nation. And before we talk to Hannah, I just wanted to say thank you to VIP Framing for sponsoring this. Of course, they're doing a great job where you can get your frames, shirt framed, your boots framed, whatever you want framed at VIP Framing. So, welcome, Hannah. You're a 23-year-old current professional footballer, left back, left wing back, currently playing for Blackburn in the Championship. So, before we go into the time at Blackburn, we always start off with what it's like growing up. And I believe you were born and raised in Darlington. So, what was that like growing up?
Yeah, I think it's a small town. It's obviously in the northeast of England. There's not tons of teams around there, but I think I initially got into football because my older brother played it. He wasn't very good, but I think just when you're younger, you just want to do anything that like your older siblings are doing. So I think he played for Darlington TSC, which was like a boys' team, but they had a team from like under 8s onwards up until like the under 20s. So I joined when I was quite young, played with the boys for quite a while. I think I played with them from when I was about 9 till I was going on 12, I think. So played with them for a while, and then yeah, it was a small town, not many people there. You pretty much know everyone in the town. It's nice.
When you were growing up, you just mentioned that you played with the boys. And I feel like for a lot of the female athletes that come through, they do end up playing with the boys somewhere in their career. Do you think, well, why do you think that is? Do you think it's because you're just as advanced as a 13-year-old girl than as the 15-year-old boys?
I think the reason for me was probably that there wasn't very many girls' teams at the time. I don't think women's football was as big when I was younger, and like if they were, the girls kind of just played because they got shoved into it. It wasn't that they wanted to, whereas the boys like really wanted to play. There was cups, there was all this stuff that like I wanted to be involved in to make it competitive.
So when you were growing up, I mean, there definitely would have been some brilliant women's players that maybe didn't get the opportunity to sign on to contracts like you ended up doing in your career. Do you agree with that? Like, do you think that when you were growing up, there's been a huge difference in the last 20 years where women's players back then wouldn't have even had the opportunity to play at the level that they can now?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like even if you just listen to the stories, like Beth Mead's got a book out, and I read that she played for a boys' team. She was playing for a girls' academy and a boys' team. I think it just shows that although it's progressed, definitely when people generations above me were younger, the opportunities definitely weren't there. And yeah, I think we're lucky, a lot of us, that we had parents who sacrificed a lot of time and effort to get us to these places and give us the opportunities to get where we are now. And I think unfortunately there will have been players who have slipped through the cracks who could have been better but weren't given the fair chance that they deserved.
So with your brother then, when he was growing up, you just mentioned that he played, maybe not as good as you, maybe he could have signed that professional contract, you never know. But when you were growing up with him, do you often play with him in the playground or the park?
Yeah, he's 6 years older than me, so it started with Hannah coming to the field. Basically, I'm just getting shot at in goal while he wanted to have someone to try block the shots. But I think the more I watched him and like would go watch his games, I just thought it was fun. And I think his name's Dom. He was just like obsessed with FIFA. He would constantly be playing it. He memorized all the songs, like all the countries, flags off it. I just became obsessed with it because he was.
Well, I've got to say, though, when you play FIFA, you definitely start to learn flags and everything very quickly. I've got to say, I win those games quite a lot. So when you were growing up then, when did you start to take football pretty seriously? Because obviously at the age of 13, you were in a boys' team and, you were doing pretty well for yourself. Because when you're at that age playing with boys, you would think you've probably got a decent chance at doing something in football.
Yeah, well, it's actually the owner of the whole centre. He's called Ian. He was like, I think it's time for you to move on. Like, you should try going an academy. And I was really against it. I think I was very comfortable where I was. And he was like, no, like, you need to move on. Like, if you want to go somewhere, the academy is where it was. And he's the one who told me to go to Middlesbrough. I think a big part of it was I liked playing with the boys. Like, I was a little tomboy. I was friends with all the boys I was playing with, so I kind of just liked where I was. But I think by Ian telling me I need to move on if I wanted to gain anything from it, like that was the push I needed.
So when you went to this academy, then I often get told by a lot of people, a lot of the players that come onto here, and we often have this chat about the academies, and I kind of base it off the Premier League academies, and I'm sure it'd be the same wherever anyone went. But I feel as if players that are coming through academies get halted and grinded so hard that they're becoming robots and they're becoming injury prone. They're becoming not even humans anymore. I mean, they're so good at football, but take them outside of football and they struggle quite a lot. Do you think that that's a problem with the English football pyramid or whoever is involved in it, that these players are not getting a life out of football. It's just you're going to be a professional footballer, and you look at the stats, and not a lot of them actually make it professional.
I think it's obviously changed since I was younger. I think we train 3 times a week. So when you're in school, I was obviously in secondary school at the time. I didn't think it was that much because honestly, like 3 days a week, I was doing homework and stuff. I didn't really have much else to do. But I think when you get to like I think I started working just before my 15th birthday. So like that's when it became a struggle, I feel like, because you had your football, you had homework, you had GCSEs coming up, you had work. And I think that's when I would say 15 onwards is your make or break year. Like you're either gonna sacrifice everything you have and like go through, like there's been days when you just couldn't be bothered, it's really hard, like you go through that and you're right, I want to try and make it, or you're like, it is too much and I'm just gonna go do whatever else makes them happy, which is also totally fine.
So was this probably the hardest part of your 23 years so far? Do you think that this was a very difficult time?
Uh Honestly, no. I like a lot of me and my friends talk about it sometimes, and we're like, some of us, like some of them who don't play anymore, would say that like it was really difficult. But I think I just was like obsessed with it. I still am. So like any time I got to train out, it's what I looked forward to. I'd wake up in the morning and just be like, I get to go to football today. Like that got me through, rather than, oh, I have to go to football tonight, I'm knackered. It was never that.
So when you were at this age, did you never would have thought about having a second string to your bow, or you were just so direct on becoming a professional footballer?
Yeah, I knew it was definitely what I wanted to do, but I was always very like, I never knew where women's football was going to go at the time. It was getting there, but like I didn't think it'd be something I could do full time, which is essentially why I ended up going to America, because I was so scared that football wouldn't develop enough for me to do that as a job.
I think in the last 10 years alone, I mean, women's football's just grown so much. And maybe people put it down to the women's Euros winning, England winning the Euros, whatever it may be. It's doing really successfully right now. And I'm sure it's only going to become better. So when you were growing up and you were watching this, and it's essentially your dream job, and as you just mentioned, you were never sure if you could make it because you were never sure what would happen to women's football. When you were at this age, whatever age you were, what did you think what women's football would be like in the next 10 years? I mean, you wouldn't have imagined today, but what did you imagine?
Being brutally honest, I didn't even really watch women's football. I don't think it was really streamed unless you went to a game. It wasn't really streamed, and Sunderland were the only team who were in and around like the WSL and the Championship at the time, and I just didn't really watch it. So I think I'd like, you have like your Beth Meads, like your Steph Hortons, they were around our area, so everyone would speak about them, Jordan Nobbs. So you looked at where they were, like, oh, they're playing for England. So I think it was like it could go somewhere, but they were like rare talents that had made something. So like for those who weren't like your rare talents, it was like, where do we fit in that pyramid? Like, is it still a sustainable thing? I didn't think, from being brutally honest, I didn't think the second like tier 2, obviously the Championship, I didn't think that would be fully professional yet. But I think obviously, like you said, the Euros, winning that made women's football like spiral, which I think is amazing. It does keep building, which I think is a really good thing, and I hope it does keep going and going, because I think we get the fans now. Like you've seen Arsenal sell out the Emirates, like it proves that people are invested, so it's good.
So do you think that it was the women's final that England won? Do you think that was the reason why women's football was taken off?
I do think it is a massive, massive thing. The fact it was in England, I was lucky enough to go to the opening game, and I didn't think it would be as packed out as it was. And I think just the fact that the whole country had it, and it was something like the men weren't on, it was fully like the women, like we had something to focus on as a country, and I think that really did help.
So obviously this year, I believe, is the women's Euros, right? They play in, is it Switzerland? I think it's Switzerland.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. I really want to go. I don't know if I'll be able to go, but I'm really looking forward to it. And so with England obviously winning it last time, let's just talk on England here. Do you think there's a possibility that we could bring it home again?
Yeah, you're always gonna back your home nation. I think when you look at the talent that we've got coming through, like the girls who were obviously there last year, and then the ones that are coming through, it's just like an amazing pool of players. So I don't see why we couldn't, with the managerial staff and like the players. I genuinely think we could.
Hmm. So in the next few years, is there a potential call up for yourself?
I don't think so. I don't think
You
so.
never
But
know.
you never know. You never know what would happen. I wouldn't cross my fingers, but you never know.
You never know. So let's just go back to your playing career then. So you're playing for Teesside RTC. What does that actually stand for?
Teesside Regional Talent Centre.
Okay, and this is what you were talking about this guy that wanted you to join the academy. And I believe you got to some sort of semi-final in 2016, the FA Cup one.
Yeah, I think that was against Millwall. Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest things we did as an academy. It was obviously like a big thing for us. I think that's the furthest I'd ever been in the country. I'd never really travelled down south, so I think that was a big thing. Yeah, we all really enjoyed that.
Well, down south's nice. We got London, we got these nice places, but it's
When
usually
you're
quite.
from up north, you don't really venture past like Birmingham. That's classed as the south.
So when you were with Teesside, of course, the semi-finals. Do you remember the journey and what it was like to play in the team? Did you expect to get that far in the cup?
No, we definitely didn't. I think, like I said, there's 3 teams. There was 3 teams up north. The academies, it was pretty much Sunderland, us, and obviously there was Durham as well. But we never expected it because the southern teams were always powerhouses. I think it was always like we were seen as the underdogs in every game, just because you see the talent that come through the academies from these big clubs, and we just weren't that academy. So I think we were really shocked to be there.
And then obviously when you were there, what was it like when you won that game to get into the semis?
That was amazing. I think obviously we thought this was like the World Cup at the time. Like I look back at it now and it makes me laugh. But I think just even at a young age, like just the emotion that football brings you, like the sense of pride we all had, like the togetherness, like I just loved every minute of it, to be fair.
Again, I was watching the England under-17 women. They were playing in, I think it was the Dominican Republic. And I watched the majority of the tournament that they had. It was the World Cup within the summer. And it was just like some of these players that you're seeing, how are they not? I mean, some of them are, but some of them haven't even been signed for big clubs. I mean, you've got some of them play for Arsenal and things like that. But when you look at the ones that are coming through now, and you compare it to players that are playing in the Women's Super League and in the Championship, do you think there's room for these players to come through within the next few years? I mean, they're only 17, but I think that some of these players that I saw were like something out of this world.
Yeah, I definitely think like we have some young players that have come through with us if they're from like Wales or there are girls in the England setup. But I think it is really important to have them in these setups. Like it brings you on so much physically, like you get reading of the game. I think the most important thing is to have them in the environment, even if they're still playing within their academies, to train with like some of the girls who are like 25, 26 and have so much experience. It can only bring them on, and like they teach us stuff as well. Like we look at them and like, wow, half the time.
Well, there was someone who's 15, maybe she's 16 now. And I was speaking to her, and she was saying that she got called up like that just to be in the environment. And she saw all of her Arsenal players like Russo. And it's just crazy to hear. And obviously, she literally was in the same school as me and things like that. And it was really nice to hear someone so local going into this setup and into Arsenal. Arsenal do it pretty well. But when you're a footballer, what do Blackburn do? I mean, is there a gap in between the Women's Super League and the Championship where that doesn't happen as much, or does it still happen pretty frequently?
Obviously speaking on behalf of Blackburn, and like I have friends at different clubs, I would say that we do bring a lot up, and I think maybe the opportunity is bigger to come up with championship clubs because maybe like the squad size isn't as big, or like the opportunity just to get minutes maybe in a league that obviously is very different from the WSL. Like I think it gives them a better chance. And even those that maybe we have some people who are on like dual reg who'll go play for like a tier 3 team, but they'll train with us. So I think that's like a good happy medium. Like they get in the game time they need while getting the exposure to a good standard in training.
So, of course, as I mentioned at the start, sponsored by VIP Framing, and they've always got a question for footballers that come on. So they wanted to ask, if you had to pick one player, dead or alive, to have a shirt or boot framed up on the wall, who would it be and why?
Oh my goodness.
There's a lot to choose from.
There's so many. Seriously, I think I'd honestly say someone like Beth Mead. I think when her book came out, I was flying to America the next day and I read it on the plane journey, the whole book. I was just like mesmerized by it, and I think it was so relatable in so many different aspects. And I think it's just so nice how genuine she was to see someone from a very local area to just go on and do something so good. She's obviously like she spoke about not being picked for the Olympics, and then like a few years after she's golden boot at Euros. Like it just shows how quickly life changes, and I just think she's an inspiration to so many people, but I think genuinely up north as well she's like thought very highly of.
With the Women's Super League obviously developing and more clubs coming into it. So, for example, you look at Arsenal, the Arsenal club, and as a franchise or whatever, they're spending a lot more money into the women's teams, and same with United, same with other clubs. But I also feel as if the gap can also have a risk of becoming a bit bigger between the clubs in the Women's Championship and in the Women's Super League as well. Do you agree? Do you think that the investment coming in could need to be spread out a bit more? There might be a rule that needs to come in?
I think that's ironic because we have this debate a little bit at football, but I think it's obviously hard because if you even look at our league, we have some teams who their budget is like astronomical. But I think I'd rather maybe have them disparities within budgets and have the women's game grow, because if you look at Newcastle, for example, they've gone back-to-back promotions and they've really backed their women's team. So I hope it's a knock-on effect that teams will see that. Like Birmingham have had a lot of money put into them. Obviously, Tom Brady's put a lot into, and that's a lot for a foreign, like someone from another country to even go across and be like, you're worth investing into. And I think although you do see the disparities sometimes, I think it's worth it to see the development of the game, and it will catch up eventually.
I think it's a really cool opportunity for not just the players, but for me as well. I got a press pass for Tottenham versus Arsenal, and it was unbelievable. And something went wrong, so I had to go all around the stadium, and I was behind the scenes, and I was seeing all of this, and it was just incredible to see. So all the clubs like Tottenham, they're all open to doing this sort of stuff, and I have to thank Tottenham because Tottenham is so kind to me and to other people as well. So let's move on then to coronavirus time, into Limestone University, into America. I'm guessing you didn't move over there because of COVID.
No,
Okay.
not because of COVID.
So when you were over there, what was that like with COVID going on and the world was in complete lockdown?
It was very weird because I obviously left. I hadn't seen like anyone for months who just been with my parents, but going there, the flight was dead. I think there was 4 people on a whole British Airways flight, so that was crazy. But over there, it was like life as normal. We had to wear masks, which was fair enough. But I remember I'd ring my parents every day, and I'd be like, "Oh, we went and did this," and they're like still stuck in the house. We had to get the COVID test every single week because we were playing, and at one point we had to play against another team with masks on. So that was interesting. Yeah, that was the only way we could play. But
you played outside with masks?
Outside with like snood masks on. It was difficult.
It must have been, because they were proposing that somewhere in another league in another country in the world, and that was, I think it was a bit of a joke, but to hear someone actually do that would have been quite something. So how did you actually get the move to America then? Because obviously you were at this academy. Was it a scout that got you over there? And also, by the way, how did you leave your family?
Oh, that was awful. So I went through a company, and they basically had trial days where coaches would come over from America and come and watch you, or they would make highlights from the games that we played with them and send them over to coaches, and then they would basically decide if they wanted you or if they wanted to speak. And I was meant to visit Limestone, but then COVID came, so I never actually got to visit it. But basically the company just did everything for me. They sorted out like the contact with the coaches. You had to get visas. You have to have a million different injections because clearly they think we need them before we go over. But yeah, the company pretty much did everything. It was called Future Elite at the time, but I think it's changed now. But yeah, quite a few of my friends have gone through them, and the company just did everything. And then leaving my family, I think that was the worst part of it all. I cried for 2 weeks straight. I was ringing my mum and dad, bless them, at like 2 a.m. for them. And they were like, "What's wrong?" And I would just cry. And I was like, "I'm coming home. I can't do it." And they were like, "Just do 2 weeks. And if you can't do it, then we'll get you." But something just clicked in the like 16th day. And I was like, right, I love it. I'm going to stay.
That's definitely good parenting, because some parents would tell them to come home straight away. So that's very good of your parents to tell you to wait and see it out. I think maybe for a lot of people, I think for me, I'd like to go over to America. So if I was in your shoes, I think I'd like to do that. Probably not realizing that I'd probably miss my family more than you probably do. So when you went over there, because I always talk to players and they always say to me, if they go to America, it was a very good decision that they made. Do you agree with that? Because I feel like I spoke to one of the players that used to play for LA Galaxy Academy, and he was telling me that they have 15 pitches for them to go on. It's just obscene, and it's not even their first sport.
Yeah, I think America, especially the second school I went to, was the best thing for me. Like athletically, just absolute powerhouses, athletes. So I think it really developed me as a player, but just as a person, you have to learn to live away from home. You have to sort out all these things that you never thought you'd have to. And like, even what you touch on, the facilities there was just like ridiculous. For example, the university, there was an hour away from me, Nebraska, they like broke the world record for the most attended women's game in the world for volleyball. And it was like 93,000 people. And it's just like an amazing thing. Like how they do sports over there is phenomenal. And I think I met friends for life, and I couldn't fault a single thing really about it, apart from some of the food.
Well, I was about to say, what was the food like?
I'm very, very picky, to be fair, but some of their food choices are interesting, to say the least.
I'm going to America in 2026. So I hope the food where I go might be a bit better, is what I hope. But a lot of people tell me the food's not good there, so I have to be careful, but I'm not that picky. So when you were there, what were you studying? You were playing football, I believe, and studying as well?
Yeah, I got a degree in sports and exercise science.
So is that being like a sports scientist?
Yeah.
So is that, so, because again, people go to America to play football, but then they wanted to add something extra just in case football didn't work out.
Yeah, so I know I want to stay within it, like within sports when I'm done. And I think I don't actually know what I want to do. Sometimes I want to do strength and conditioning. Sometimes I want to do analysis. Like I'm all over the place. And I think that gave me like a really broad spectrum of stuff that I could do. It's like a very much an umbrella type degree. So I think I've got that. And then I'd like to get a master's at some point in the future.
Have you done any analyst work before?
I'm doing it right now with Blackburn, actually. They let me do it, so I work with the academy and the men's first team on their analysis. So that's actually really fun.
That is really cool. So when I went to Tottenham, bit of a story here. When they were playing at Leyton Orient against Aston Villa, I was sitting next to what probably would have been the analyst with his ear set in or whatever, and he's giving all the instructions down to the bench with this whole screen full of everything, like touches, whatever you want. And I looked over and he kind of like moved his computer away so I couldn't quite see, but it was really cool. I was like, I couldn't believe it that this guy is in the press box giving instructions to them down on the touchline. So what do you see differently up there compared to what they see on the pitch?
I think like little things like your formation. Obviously, you can see it when you're on pitch, but when you're in like the sky, it's so much easier to see like different rotations, movements, patterns that they might do constantly. And I think maybe just space. When you're at ground level, it's hard to see, but the amount of space you can see from above is, I think, a massive thing that you'd gain.
But that obviously you take that into your game when you play for Blackburn, right? So can you exploit spaces better than others?
I think sometimes I become more aware of where maybe even our spaces are when we have to watch film all the time. And when you rewatch our games, I think analysis is one of the most important things you can do, because when we watch a game back from maybe 3 weeks ago, you're like, oh, there was constantly space there. So maybe next week we look at that space.
So you played every match over the 2 seasons, 3 assists, over 2,000 minutes played in a Division 2 program. What the players that you were playing against, how did that season work out? Because where were the academies based? Were they all like pretty local to where you were, or?
In America,
Yeah, in America, yeah.
they were the furthest at Limestone. We travelled, I think it was 3 or 4 hours.
Okay, so that's like nearly half of England.
Yeah, it
Okay.
doesn't. It's not a lot there. They think like that's just a day trip. But
Yeah, okay, that makes sense because it is a very big place. But with the players that you were playing with, how come you started in Division 2? Was it just because you were like a first year there?
I think it was the first year, and I think COVID was a massive thing. A lot of coaches didn't recruit with it being COVID, because the season is normally in the fall, which is August to December. But because it was a January till May season because of COVID, a lot of coaches didn't recruit. And I didn't have any footage. Like I'd been playing at Middlesbrough with the women, but games didn't get recorded really then. So it's hard for them to know. And I think I wanted to go in and I wanted to get minutes. And I knew that where I went would be a stepping stone. So I needed to get stats to move on, which I think Limestone gave me.
So did you prefer your time at Middlesbrough or Limestone?
They were so different. Middlesbrough gave me the opportunity to play in a women's team, and I'm literally go up there, and all the coaches that had such a massive impact on me. But I think I'd say Middlesbrough, just for all the first things it gave me in football.
And obviously it would have been the first time to go, change of room, first time to do everything. So there's often a saying about like a men's change of room and the experience of that. Would you say there's something similar for the females where there's a togetherness, there's a community bond, doesn't matter how old you may be?
Yeah, there definitely is. I definitely went in and was the shyest kid in the whole place. I just had my head down. But I think you learn a lot from like how certain people carry themselves in the change room and like maybe what it takes. Like you go in, I genuinely don't think it's the same now. I'm in the change room as one of the older ones, but just like the ruthlessness of some people and just realizing like that's the world you're in now. Like figure it out quick.
Yeah, because there's some players that are just completely different on the pitch than off the pitch, and in a good or bad way, you make your mind up on that one. But so when you were at Limestone, then how did that come to an end? Because you moved universities. Is that something normal to do?
Yeah, I think quite a few people move universities. Obviously, 4 years is quite a long time, so I think quite a lot of people do move. But I'd spent like a year there pretty much, and then a year and a half, and I knew I wanted to go play at a higher level. So I just spoke with my coach, and I think he knew like after the first half a season, he knew I wanted to move on at some point. So he was really nice about it and just helped me and told me like the best way to go about it.
So what was your kind of day in the life? What did you actually do when you were at university?
So basically would wake up like 7:30, 8 o'clock. I'd go to class. I'd be in classes until 2. So I'd have a break for like an hour to have lunch at between 12 and 1. Go back for a 1 o'clock till 2 o'clock class. Training would be 2:15, so you'd be sprinting across the campus to get to training and get changed. Train till about 4:15, and then have lifting would either be after that, so you'd lift 4:30 till 5:30, or in one of my semesters I had a class after that, so I'd go to class, come back, lift, and then go back to my dorm. But I also worked, so some of my days were really long. I'd go work like 8 till midnight and then just do the whole thing again.
So where did you work? Was it outside, inside the university?
So in America, you're only allowed to work on the campus if you're an international student. So I just worked on the front desk of like the dorms and had to like click people in with a little button.
So you were still on site then, so it's a bit easier.
Yeah, I literally worked in the apartment block that I lived in. So.
Oh, okay. So it's not that bad.
No, I just went down in my pajamas and just went back up when I was done.
Okay, so it's not as bad as going outside the place and then having to drive or whatever.
Yeah.
So did you like America? Did you like America? Was it good?
Yeah, I think the amount of things I did in that place. I stayed last year, 2024. It's weird to say that. I stayed the whole year and stayed in California to play a summer league there, and I just got to see so many different places. I got to go to like Alcatraz, the prison place.
The prison, yeah. Alcatraz, yeah.
Got to go there, see San Francisco, like so many different places. I just had so many different experiences and met so many different people. I absolutely loved it.
The summer league, because I know the MLS, for example, starts in February. Is that what you mean? You mean that sort of league?
No, so you have like 2 semesters when you're there. You have your fall, which is August to December, which is when you play. You play 2 games a week for that whole set out of months. And then basically from January to May is like your spring semester, where you only play 5 games in that whole time. And it's pretty much where you do most of your schoolwork. And then summer league was pretty much end of May till the end of July. And that was just loads of summer teams all over the whole States. There was tons of different leagues, and if you wanted to stay, you just played in that instead of going home and doing your summer fitness.
So to play in the American heat then, in the peak of summer, how did you do that?
It was hard. California was hot, but we got to the semi-finals of a tournament, and we went to Arizona to play. It was the middle of July, and we had to play at 7 a.m. because it was already 40 degrees. And we had like a photographer, and there's just like, you just see us all keeled over looking like we're about to pass out. That was the hottest I've ever played in, but you just had to put ice on you and hope that you'd cool down eventually.
In the facilities that you were playing in, because I know in America, college facilities, 30, 40,000 capacity stadiums, which is, well, more than what the championship will have. For example, Vicarage Road, Watford, you may be able to see behind me up there, is only, 25,000 or something. But so what was the facilities like that you were playing in America?
Oh, my facilities at my university were unreal. We played in a full stadium, and it was a weird setup, but it kind of went like the stands were at main level and you went down into it, so you kind of felt like you were in the middle of the whole thing. But it was just amazing. We obviously had that whole stadium to ourselves. Well, we shared it with the men's team, but you had like a whole weightlifting area, cafeteria to yourself, like numerous amount of like indoor places where you could go play, just the list was endless. Ice baths, every recovery method you could think of.
That's crazy. That's mad to hear that. You either play in England and you don't get that, or do you get that in England? I wouldn't, not as much as what you get in America, right?
No, it's crazy to think that at university you get a lot more at your disposal than even at like a lot of WSL clubs.
You get treated like a god over there. It's crazy to hear.
Yeah.
So then you came back to England in the summer of 2024, right?
Mhm.
So why did you decide to come back to England? Because maybe you were going back and forth between home and America, but to come back to Blackburn, is that obviously a bit more local to where you used to grow up?
Blackburn is probably one of the closer ones to where I grew up, but my parents moved down south, so they're now in Gloucester. So I think I would have ended up anywhere, but I think I wanted to come home. I'd spent a lot of time away from home, from family. I'd missed out on my niece and nephew growing up a little bit. They're only 2, but I missed like them being born. There was family events I'd missed out on, so I think I was ready to come home, and I really wanted to play in England. I think obviously I was 16 playing in tier 3, so I wanted to try make a name for myself obviously in this league. So that's mainly the reason why.
So how did you get offered the Blackburn role? Is that a job? I mean, to play football, is it really a job? But
I say to my parents, oh, I'm going to work, and they're just like, it's not work.
Well, to get paid for it must be.
I know. I think it's different when they're like, no, we're going to work.
Mm-hmm.
My assistant coach in America, her best friend is an agent and works with an agency, so I went through them, and they got in contact with like a variety of different teams, and then Blackburn reached out and basically said they wanted me to go in for a week to see how it was and how I would fit in. And then when I was there, it was just mutually decided with me and the coach that like that was the place where I wanted to be.
And then obviously now you're going into championship life. You've played around, I think, 9 appearances so far. What would you say it's been like, your adjustment back to England to the cold weather?
I think I was used to the cold in Nebraska, where I was. The weather was -20 sometimes in the winter.
Wow.
So I think it was freezing today, but I think I just the girls here, I just like adore them all. That's like such a good group of people. I'm like constantly laughing, and I think I just have missed the football in England. Like it is very different to in America, and I think I find the weeks harder, even though I think I run less, which makes no sense. But I think I just love the setup of it and how it is here, and just even little things like going out and doing stuff with your friends, like not doing school anymore. I think I really appreciate that at the minute.
Obviously, the championship this year, I know Blackburn have been in the championship for quite a long time. So at the start of the season, before we talk about what's happened, at the start of the season, what was the aim for the club? Because if you've been in a league for 5 or 6, 7 years, the aim would probably be to go up.
Yeah, I don't think going up was a goal. I might be wrong, but like from like being brutally honest, it wasn't. We knew where other teams stood with investments and different types of things. Blackburn have always been like a mid-table championship club, and I think it was to beat last year's. I think they came 6th or 7th maybe last year, and I think it was to either stay the same as that or beat it, which I think is a realistic goal whenever you're going into a season.
This season in the championship, what's been the best game that you've played in so far?
I'd say the Southampton away game. It was our first away game. I think we had like 4 people go off with injuries. Someone had a stud to the face, like cramp. I think we went into 14 minutes extra time. I was just like backs against the walls, but that was our first win. I think away from home in a big stadium like St Mary's is really like it's a fun experience, and I think that for me was the best because I just thought everything was going against us, and just like we still managed to pull through.
When you played at St Mary's, what was that like to play at a Premier League ground, to play at top-notch place ground?
I think it was surreal, like walking in. I remember just like looking around, and just one thing that really stood out to me was the women were incorporated everywhere in the stadium. So it wasn't just, oh, this is the men's stadium, the women were incorporated. The change rooms were so nice. I was just looking around, and like when you do the pitch walk, I think one thing I've never done is take it for granted, and I'll never take for granted the stadiums and like opportunities I've been able to play in because of this team.
Because obviously you never know when your career might end in an injury or, God forbid, but, you never know when it can end. But to play at St Mary's, how many people turned up? Do you remember the attendance for that game?
near enough 3,000, I think. It felt like I was trying to find my parents. I always find them before games, and I was just a sea of like red flags and everything. And I remember it took me until the second half to find them because I genuinely couldn't see anything above all the people.
So, as I said, you're ninth currently in the league, 9 played, 9 points off the place above you, which would be eighth. My maths has gone out the window. And obviously, Charlton are 8 points ahead of Blackburn. So, what would you say currently is the aim? Because I know there's been a bit of a break right now. So, what have you been doing in this break? Have you been training still every week?
Yeah, we got winter programs, so we all had that in. We've obviously been back with the team this week in and training, and I think if you look at results, we've never been smashed like 5-6-0. It's always been like your ones or twos. So I think it's tuning in on the fine details and realizing we can compete with every team in the league. Like, I don't think there's been a team where I've sat there and been like, all my life we don't have a chance. And I think it's just being clinical in both boxes. Really, you need to stop goals going in and you need to score goals. And I think I have every confidence in every player that's on our team that we can get results, because I think football's football. It doesn't know you anything, but I think there is some unfair results if you look at how we played in certain games. So I think it's just rectifying games that maybe we didn't do as well in.
So, obviously, currently it's January, 3 days into the month. Now, behind the scenes stuff, any transfers going on for Blackburn?
I don't think I'm allowed to say anything until it gets announced.
So maybe
but
that means something's going on then. We don't know.
might be things going on that'll be announced soon. I guess that's for you guys to find out on social media.
Okay, we'll have to find out. So with Blackburn currently, you come back and the first game back is Portsmouth, and you play them in the FA Cup, which I actually went to last year, FA Cup final. What a Wembley, what an occasion. And I'm really hoping you play Tottenham so I get to go, but you know, whatever. Or some local team down south. But with Portsmouth, you obviously probably the favourites. Don't want to, crash the chances too early, but I'd say you're definitely favourites. Portsmouth haven't won any out of their 10 Women's Super League games, but to get this far in the competition, they've got to have won something. So to play Portsmouth, what is the focus? Because you haven't played a proper game in a few weeks and maybe even months.
I think it's just to be like, get on the ball, be confident and trust ourselves. I think you can never take any team for granted. We know that Portsmouth have some good strengths, and also with what comes with that is weaknesses. Every team does, but I think it's just trust what we've been told by the coaches on how they want to play, like meet our objective goals and focus on ourselves. I think is the most important thing, and clear out the outside noise.
So currently with Blackburn now, what is it like to play on a match day? What is the routine that you do? Do you wake up certain times? Do you go to bed at a certain time?
Obviously it depends if you're home or away, but home games are normally 2 o'clock. So me and my roommate have got in the routine of having Sunday roasts on a Saturday before pre-game. So we started that, and then wake up on a game day, probably like 9:30, 10. I like to say 10. I just wake up when the sun comes through. But just have a chilled breakfast and then a little snack before we go. We leave at about 11:30. It's been a while since we've had a home game, so I'm getting a bit stressed that I've got that wrong. But get there for 12:30 and then have a pitch walk, get sorted, go out for warm up at 1:15, come back in about 10 to, quickly put on your game shirt, and then we're out.
So in 2020 with Ben Foster at Watford, he was documenting what it was like behind the scenes for footballers, obviously at Watford. To go on an away day, I think must be like the coolest thing ever, to stay in a hotel, to go and get food. Is that what it's like? Like, what's the away days like?
I think you do take for granted in a sense how fun it actually is to do, because, for example, like going away to Portsmouth, that's going to be on the bus forever. But I think I really enjoyed the time with my teammates. They were constantly playing games. They've introduced me to a new board game called Partners that I'm like obsessed with, and I think it is nice that you could get all your food made for you. You're spending time with like your best friends. Like, you can't really complain.
So now we've spoken about your career. Obviously, come the end of the season, hopefully you're in the Championship next season. Could even be a promotion push. You never ever know. And hopefully I get to come to some game, whether it be Watford or London City, whatever it may be. It'd be very cool to come down and see Blackburn in the flesh. But last thing that we do here on the show is we build you a FIFA card. So, obviously, unfortunately, the Women's Championship isn't quite on FIFA just yet. Next year, you never know. So, we're going to build you this card based on the Women's Championship and what is that like. So, starting with your pace, what would that be?
Oh, you can't ask me these questions. Oh, I don't even know. I'm not the quickest.
So what would it, do you play FIFA?
I haven't played FIFA in years, absolutely years.
But you know the ratings are from 0 to 99.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would you give the pace?
70.
70. That's not bad. That's not bad, especially for a left back. It's a defensive position.
I don't even know. That's a rough guess.
Okay, what about your shooting?
Oh dear. Like a 40.
Okay, still not bad for a left back. Passing?
Oh, 65.
Okay, let's have some positivity. You got 3 more left. You got dribbling, defending, and physicality. So let's go for dribbling.
Oh, 55.
Okay, defending.
70.
Okay, that's not bad. And physicality?
Oh dear. 60.
It's not a bad rating. Hannah Luke, what a FIFA card that will be. So now that everything's come to an end on this podcast, we want to say thank you to VIP Framing for sponsoring this. And of course, thank you to yourself. I want to wish you all the best for the season to come. I know there's a lot more games to be played, but I know Blackburn have got it in them. So good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.